So, welcome everyone to the power of play, making good teams great. If you can all stand up. So, the key thing with play is to make sure you're nice and warmed up, because we wouldn't want to sprain anything. So, if you can just sidestep, so feet hip width apart, and then just slowly rotate your head in one direction. Yeah, we'll do it twice around. It's the heaviest bit of you. And then the other way. Okay. And then hold out your arms and rotate your wrists as well. There we go. Just look out for neighbors. We wouldn't want any injuries. There we go. And then just hands on your hips. There we go. A little bit of rotation. There we go. You didn't think you were going to get this amount of exercise, did you? At this conference. Great. And then the other way, of course. Really important to be balanced. Okay. So when you are ready, follow me. Hands up in the air. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Grab a seat, guys. Well done. I practiced this with my 2-year-old this morning. So I'd like to say you created history, and you have in a way, because a month ago we did exactly that at Play Camp, which was helped organized by Jose and Luke Homan. But this is the second time that song has ever been sung in this room. So you have made this room very special indeed. So my name is Portia Tung, and I'm an internal agile coach. I'm a storyteller and also a playmaker. And playmaking is all about transforming work into play. And throughout this presentation, I'll be sharing with you why it's so important to work and play. Now what I'd like you to do is turn to a neighbor. Ideally, find someone you don't already know. It's quite easy to move around. You've got a bit of space. And just spend a minute sharing with them your favorite hobby. Go. What's your favorite? Tell me.
Okay.
What's your favorite hobby?
I'm more video thinker, so I draw, sketch. That's my favorite hobby. For now.
Drawing. Okay, thanks for playing. You can already feel, hopefully, and actually hear the difference, right, of when play is in action. So without a goal, it's hard to score. So here's our user story for this session, Play at Work. As a play seeker or play skeptic, you choose. I need ideas on how to play at work so that we can improve individual and team performance. So some success criteria, and hopefully we'll be able to tick all these off at the end of the session with your help. 1, I have a working knowledge of play. 2, I can explain the importance of play at work. 3, I have 1 or more ideas to try out at work. And last but not least, I've had fun. So how did I stumble onto this topic of play, and why am I talking about it at, Lean and Kanban conferences and Agile conferences, etc.? Well, I happened to be in Chicago some years ago, and I was in a toy store. I was in Chicago on my own for work, getting ready to play, would you believe? And it was Sunday afternoon, and I was in that toy store, and there was a little boy. He was playing with his mum, and I was perusing the bookshelf, and I came across this book called Play by Dr. Stuart Brown, and I thought, brilliant. Finally, a book to legitimize what I really want to do all the time. Meanwhile, I was looking at the book, calculating the return on investment on this thing. Could I get it on Amazon cheaper? Should I buy it now? And all these things as you do when you're shopping. And as I was trying to decide, the mother said to the little boy, oh, darling, it's time to go home now. Stop playing. And do you know what the shopkeeper said? He said, it's okay. We'll close shop when he's finished playing. And I thought, wow, I have to sponsor this shop now. And that's why I bought the book. And I read it on the way home. And I was so excited about it. I created a presentation out of it and built some of my own work on it as well. And that's what I'd like to share with you today. So Dr. Stuart Brown, and he must be right in some ways because he's a doctor after all, he defines play as something that is seemingly purposeless. It's voluntary. You cannot force people to play, because if you force them to play, what is that? Punishment. Oh, you said work. Interesting. We'll come back to that. It's also inherently attractive. So one of the things I now do when I'm feeling a bit dreary, coming into work or somewhere else, is I kind of find children on the tube, and I kind of stand near them, and then they'll find a way of playing, and then, you get drawn into them doing something silly, and it just lightens, your load. So play is inherently attractive. And time flies by when you're having fun, doesn't it? And of course, it reduces your sense of self-consciousness, and you're much more engrossed in what you do, and typically you perform much better. There's also potential for improvisation, because after all, where does drama and theater come from? Play. And there's a desire to keep going and going because it's really hard to stop. Now, for those of you who are familiar with my work, I don't really stop there. So I thought, well, Dr. Stuart Brown's definition was pretty good, but I think what we need is a play manifesto. Let's get really serious about this. So then I needed to start thinking, what does play really mean, right? And the great thing is, when you're a playmaker, you can redefine your own terms. So I thought, okay, well, actually, play is when you have more fun than purpose. So a lot of us play, and rarely is there no purpose. Because even if you ask your children, what are you doing with that truck? And they're going, no, 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 no. And I don't know, they're doing some kind of physics calculation in their little brains, right? Figuring out how those wheels are moving. But, they're learning something, right? There is a purpose to what they're doing, even if it's not clear. Likewise, you go home after a hard day's work, and, your wife says to you, why are you just sitting there reading that newspaper? And you're like, I'm not doing anything. Well, that's not true, because you're trying to relax. So what I'm saying is play also has a purpose. It's just that it should be more fun than purposeful. So with play, everyone's invited. It's an option, not an obligation. And it's an opportunity to give and receive. And last but not least, in the case of playmaking, it's absolutely game-changing, because what we're trying to do here is transforming work into play. So if you'd like to find out more about playmaking, then join us at playmaking.org. So before we begin in earnest, my friends would like me to assure you that the reason they call me the playmaker is because I'm passionate about the practice and science of play. But nonetheless, safety first, so it's really important to fasten your seatbelt. So we have some rules. We're very serious about play. The first one is communication. So communicate with an open mind in this next 40 minutes or so. Keep things simple. Acknowledge that feedback is the gift that just keeps giving. Be brave and try something different. And last but not least, be aware of others' needs as well as your own. And if at any point you find a little bit, stressed out by some of the exercises, then apply the principle of sustainable pace and take a little rest. So, are you ready for your play assessment? Did Jose not mention anything about this? Did you not study for it? I mean, clearly it's very serious. So, for us to baseline our collective understanding of play today, we're going to play a game. I'm going to show you a series of images, and with each image, if you associate it with play, then you shout, play! And if I show the image and you think, ooh, that doesn't look like play, then you say nay. Are we all clear? Okay, you're ready to play. Play or nay? Play. Play or nay? Play. Play or nay? Play. Play or nay? Play or nay? Play. Play or nay? Play. Okay, well, let's see what the computer says. Phew, we can continue with the presentation. Well done, guys. So now that we've looked at our definition of play, let's look at our play frequency. When was the last time you played at work? So for those of you who played in the last month at work, before coming here today, actually no, if we can all stand up. All stand up. So for those of you who played in the last month at work, sit down. Okay, so for those of you who played in the last week at work, grab a seat. So you're probably already sitting. I know, you know what? Well tested. Let's do that again. Right. Excellent, I'm glad you were focusing. So, right, what we're going to do, if you played in the last month at work, stay standing. Thank you for testing. And if you played in the last week at work, stay standing. Now, if you played just before coming to this conference, but at work, so presumably on Friday, given today's Monday, stay standing. Okay, so look around. We do have certainly some budding playmakers among us. Grab a seat. Well done. So in my research on play, I came up with this model, and of course models are, just a very simplistic representation of reality, but we wanted to show here whether or not you were a play seeker or play skeptic. The key thing here is to recognize it depends on the context. So you might well be a playmaker in some, and a play seeker in some contexts, and a play skeptic in another, and that's okay. So I identified 4 types of players. The first type are type 1s, those who can play and want to play. So those will be the people who presumably were still standing in that last exercise. The second type are those who can't play and want to play. So they don't quite know how, but they would love to do it if they knew how. Then there are the type 3s who can play and won't play. So they're the ones who will say, well, I play at the weekend all the time, but work is really serious. I'm career-minded. I will not play at work. I'm a professional. And then there are those who are type 4s, can't play, won't play. So these are the people who may never have learned to play, even as children, let alone as adults, right? So they're unable to play. Oh, you laugh amongst yourselves, but there are certainly type 4s that I've met before. It's not unusual. So what I'd like you to do now is just have a think about which type you are. And this talk focuses on type 1s, the can play and want to plays, so that they can help encourage the type 3s to play more at work. And also, it's a chance to give ideas to type 2s who can't play, but we'll give them some ideas to get started. And as for the type 3s and 4s, well, it's a party, everyone's welcome, so I invite you to take part. Please pass the chocolate around. Oh, good cue. Yeah, so there's some chocolates coming around. So meanwhile, I'd like to tell you a little story. Who here has heard of the sorry tale of the sea squirt? Okay, don't give the game away, darling. Right, so the sea squirt, obviously this is a kind of crochet knitted version of it, which is very cute looking. It's this little character in the middle there. In reality, it's really quite gruesome looking. It's a bit like a headless eel with kind of funny wrinkles all around. Now, the juvenile sea squirt actually looks a lot like a tadpole, and it will have looked like what our ancestors would have looked like a long time ago. And as a juvenile sea squirt, it only cares about 2 things. The first thing is nourishment, and the second one is avoiding being eaten. And that's what a little sea squirt would do all its young life. Now, when it becomes an adult sea squirt would attach itself to the hull of a boat or to a side of a rock, and then life becomes real easy. Who here is familiar with yo sushi? Yeah. So it's that kind of thing, right, for an adult sea squirt, because you've got the waves coming along, you don't even have to hunt for the food, right, because all the little microbes and everything else you enjoy, it's just like the yo sushi belt coming along in front of you, and you don't even have a bill, right, so you can go crazy. So what happens next with this adult sea squirt, do you think, over time? Any guesses? It gets fat, it gets too big. Any other guesses?
Meets another sea squirt.
Oh, it meets another sea squirt. That would be a good ending. Well, it ends up devouring its own nervous system and brain. Yeah, we have a lot to learn from nature. And you know, some cheeky teams claim that a lot of agile coaches are a bit like that. You know, ones who kind of, I think they're very cheeky indeed, you know, they kind of practice what they do, but they only have a very limited tool set, and then they always use the same tool set, and they can't really get beyond their comfort zone. But there you go, cheeky teams. So it's very sad, isn't it, and very scary that it happens, but we have so much to learn from nature. So there you go, one for thought. So neuroscientist Daniel Woper, he gave a talk actually, a TED talk, and he talks about how his theory of the brain of why it exists. Why do you think the brain exists, according to Daniel Woper? Another guess. To keep us alive? To deal with change. Indeed, it feels like that, doesn't it? Any other guesses? So according to Daniel Woper, it's movement. The brain exists to keep us moving. And if that is true, then I would say that, well, movement leads to all the beauty that we see around us in the world. And so therefore, play is the catalyst for movement, because it gives us even more reason to take action. So the lesson to be learned then is, don't be a sea squirt, but be like Nemo instead. Who here has watched Finding Nemo? Okay. And if you haven't, I would borrow a small child, because it's really worth a watch. So what are the characteristics of Nemo, would you say? He's a fish, thank you. Yes, I'm familiar with this crowd. He's a fish. What else?
Explorer.
He's an explorer.
Doesn't listen to his parents.
He doesn't listen to his parents. He just wants to have fun. Yeah, so he's this kind of plucky clownfish who gets captured, put into a fish tank, and has to find his way home, right? In the coral reefs. And so what we need to try to become, especially as adults, is to be more like Nemo instead of the sea squirt, and that might save us from devouring our own brains. Let's play another game. How many squares do you see? Yeah, I'm just going to give you some options here. Could be option A, B, C, or D. I'll give you a minute. Feel free to confer with a neighbor. You have 60 seconds. Have a think. Okay, so if you think it's A, raise your hand. Okay. If you think it's B, raise your hand. Okay. If you think it's C, raise your hand. Okay, and if you think it's D, raise your hand. Okay, so it's actually D according to this exercise, because it depends on what you mean by a square. There we go. So it highlights that playfulness, gives you that creative angle of problem solving as well. So why should we play? Well, it's all the same reasons that children play, right? It shapes an organism's brain. It makes animals smarter and more adaptable. It enables us to sustain social relationships, right? To connect and interact with one another. And it fuels creativity and innovation. So I'd like to share with you a story. So they did this lab experiment with rats. I mean, it's a shame, right? The poor rats always get it. And they took one group of rats and split them into two groups. One group of rats were allowed to play. Don't ask me how they knew that. And the second group of rats, they weren't allowed to play. And then they took these two groups of rats, they put them in a room, set them free in the room, and then they put a cat in the room. So what happened next? Some of the rats played with the cat. Indeed, that's very daring, isn't it? Very Indiana Jones. So all the rats knew to run into a hole to hide, right? Until the cat disappeared. And then they took the cat away. When the cat was gone, what happened next? The playful ones came out. Okay. And then what happened? What about the ones that didn't play? They stayed. Yeah. The ones who didn't play never came out of the hole ever again. Food for thought, eh? There we go. See, I told you play is really a serious topic here, not for the faint-hearted. So here is Life's Creative Circle as created by Paul Arden, a former creative director of Saatchi, and Saatchi, the really world-famous advertising agency, and I've kind of taken the liberty to annotate it a little bit. So according to him, let's model play in our lifetime. 0 to 1 was nothing, and 1 to 3 is minimalism, and ages 3 to 5 is fantasy. So we're all playing, right? Because when have we learned and grown the most in our lifetime so far? Right? As children, right? In nursery. And then we move on, we play, and then you can see from ages 5 to 10, beginnings of coping. And then from 10 to 15, art becomes grown up, right? And then we move on to 15 and 20, where we have a need to change the world. I love talking to teenagers, it's so inspiring. And then that's probably thereabouts we start getting Saturday jobs, and this thing called money and work and career comes onto the horizon, and the suitcase appears. But we still play. And from 20 and 25, we have beginnings of political awareness to maturity, through to hell-bent on success when we're 30 to 40. And then as we reach 40 to 45, repeating success. I'm looking forward to that. And then we move on to 45 to 50, which is trying to keep up with the 25-year-olds. Looking forward to that as well. And then you reach your watershed 50, right? So I mean, obviously this is a little bit dated because it was published back in 2003 and the retirement age has moved. 50 to 60 is about reinventing yourself, but obviously we have to work longer now. And that takes us nicely to 60 to 75, which is a gentle descent into senility. I know, I told you, it's grim, isn't it, really? And then, of course, the rubber ducky appears again. Hooray! But by then, we're at 75, 85, youth regained. You know, it's where you kind of wear the shell suit bottoms and you just don't care anymore. You're walking down the high street in your flip-flops. And then when you reach 85 to 100, inhibitions lost. Don't give a damn. It's all about me, 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 right? So can I just see a show of hands? How many of you feel that this accurately reflects kind of your relationship with play and work? See some? I mean, it certainly did with mine before I started looking into play. Okay. So, according to Dr. Stuart Brown, play leads to creativity and innovation, both of which in turn lead to invention and growth. And if that's the case, pop quiz, what's the opposite of play? Work. Yes, thank you. What else? Stagnation. What else? Boredom. What else? Chores. Okay. Well, the good news is Dr. Stuart Brown says that work can also lead to creativity and innovation. It gives us purpose and also competence, so long as we keep learning and improving, of course. So he disagrees with you. He doesn't think that work is an opposite of play. So I'm going to leave you with thinking about what the possible answer is. But I would like to show you a quick video of what play and work look like. Keep your eyes peeled. Yes, it is in real time. Would you like to watch it again? Okay. Oh, he's gone. Okay, so what do you think is most remarkable thing about this video, apart from the fact that the Americans have this as a world record, of course? Well, for me, it was the joyfulness of her friends when she got that record. I mean, can you imagine if we were so playful and collaborative and caring at work that when our friends got a promotion and we didn't, we'd really truly embrace that and celebrate it with them? I mean, that is what really the spirit of play means, right? So I ask you again, what is the opposite of play? Another go? Suggestions? Sadness? Inactivity? Death. Wow. We're getting deep here for a Monday afternoon. You still got 4 days at work to go back to. Okay, so let's have a little think, right? So imagine a world where there are no movies, no music, no jokes, no games, no risk-taking, no storytelling, no fantasy. So according to Dr. Stuart Brown, the opposite of play is depression. So imagine my surprise, right? I'm on my way home from Chicago, feeling elated that I finally have a book that vindicates my purpose on this planet and that I can play at work, and then it says, the opposite of play is depression. And I think, oh dear, I better get playing, right? Because otherwise I'm really in trouble. And that's really set me on the path of making play part of my daily work. Now let's look at how that maps in terms of the model we created earlier. So those who can play and want to play, well, they're pretty safe, right? Because they're going to be playing most of the time and they will create opportunities to do that. So they'll carry on learning. No risk of being a C-squirt there. Then there are type 2s, those who can't play and want to play. So they start off over here being quite serious about work, but the moment they get a little sniff of someone having a good time at work, they're going to be right there over, you know, trying to grow play more at work. So they're pretty healthy in their relationship to that red line there. And then you get the type 3s who can play, won't play. You know, there's only so much you can do if you only think that you are put on this planet to pursue a career, right? Because on that deathbed, just, you know, since we're being a little bit morbid anyway, on that deathbed, just imagine, right? And you're looking around to your lovely family and all those little animals you've acquired throughout your lifetime. You know, no one, your colleagues are unlikely to be there, sadly, but hopefully there might be a few. But no one's going to say, you know what, James, I'm really glad you stayed overnight to sort out that production issue when you were 40. No, you know, it's about bigger picture thinking, right? And what about the type 4s? Well, they can't play, won't play, right? So they're pretty close to the line as well. So now let's look at your recommended daily amount of play. And the good news is it doesn't take a lot. So 5 to 10 minutes of play per day is enough to uplift your spirits and get you going and actually get you being creative and innovative and give you a reason to be alive. 1 day of play lasts up to a week. This is based on some of the research that Dr. Stuart Brown does. And it's all about little and often. So just as you don't necessarily want to do binge coding, you probably don't want to do binge playing. So it's about little and often. So a bit of an anecdote. I was talking to a friend at work, and he happened to come over to my desk, and it was when I was compiling the slide. And I said to Jack, I said, how's it going? And he's a pretty jovial guy anyway, but he was extra smiley. And I said, well, what have you been up to? What's the smile about? And he goes, oh, we went on this really great team building event last Friday. And I was like, oh, that's great. What did you do? And he told me all these things. And he said, yeah, it was great. But, you know, today's Thursday and tomorrow's Friday. And I've got some stuff I've really got to look at in my inbox, which is a bit gnarly, not looking forward to it. So I suspect I'm not going to be so happy tomorrow, right? And I thought that's funny, right? Just that 1 day of play kept him going for an entire week. And luckily for most of us, we get to play at the weekends, right? And that keeps us going for the week. So I'd like you to take another minute, turn to a different neighbor, and share with them your favorite childhood toy. Give you 60 seconds. Go.
just 60 years ago, you know. I know we used to be out all day, you know, we come back home in the evening.
Play before you look at your presentation again. Go play. Go play.
I got the book, you know. Last time we recommended.
No, but go play. Just go do something playful. Go into a toy store. Buy yourself a toy. Go play.
Then I go to the toy shops and I look around things I can use for a workshop. You know,
Exactly. You need to play, but play. Okay. So how do you feel now after you've talked about and reminisced about your favorite toy as opposed to before? Energized. You want to play? Yeah. You want your pony back, did you say? Teddy back, indeed. Indeed. And the good news is that our brains aren't that clever. So even just by talking and reminiscing about play, right, it fires up all the necessary brain cells to make you feel good about play. And the moment you feel better, it means that you're more able and more resilient to focus on challenges which previously might have been a lot harder, right? So again, that 5 to 10 minutes of play every day is really a worthwhile investment. So why should adults play? Well, it breaks down barriers between people. It opens the mind, again, to enable learning. So that's why a lot of the sessions I play with, most of the time, they're play sessions for learning. It opens the heart to create a connection, of course. And it's a source of joy and also a source of hope, right? Because when you play, all of a sudden, everything is possible. Yeah, and constraints become a challenge rather than this unreasonable obstacle. So when I first started out speaking at conferences over a decade ago, I set myself this little goal of maybe one day I'll make it to Snowbird, right? And that's where they created the Agile Manifesto. So over time, I managed to speak at more and more conferences through practice and no doubt a lot of luck. So one day when there was an Agile 2011 conference, which happened to be in Snowbird, I took the opportunity, I found a couple of friends, and we even found the room where they created that manifesto. And so we wrote it up, we took a picture, right? Now, I know that sounds like an awfully trivial thing, but again, it was all about play and the journey towards it. And we met this guy called Monty, and when I tried to explain to him why there were 3 adults trying to go into this room to write some stuff on a board and that really it was quite safe for us to do so, it turned out that he worked in IT as well. But unfortunately, he got burnt out because he couldn't cope with being in IT when, unfortunately, the business had so much pressure on them and unreasonable requirements that he couldn't cope with anymore. So just before the manifesto got created, he decided to work at the hotel because life would be easier. When I started telling him about this Agile Manifesto, he got so excited and he was delighted and he was able to show us the room, right? So when you play, magical things happen, right? Sometimes unreasonable things, but that's okay. So how can we combine work with play? So that's more of a rhetorical question, so a bit of homework for you to think about. So let's give you some ideas. The first one is give yourself a break. So a lot of people will say, Portia, how do I make my team play? It's a bit like, how do I make that team over there be agile? To which I would reply, how agile are you yourself? How much do you play yourself? Because until you play, no one else is going to play with you. They're not going to be convinced, first of all, right? And they're not going to have the courage. So it's really about giving yourself a break and taking that 5 to 10 minutes and play. That could be drinking at a water cooler, at a water fountain with a friend, a colleague, and just having a chat for 5 to 10 minutes, right, at work. Going for a walk, you know, sing yourself a little song on your way to the station after work. Whatever it takes, right, but only 5 to 10 minutes. And you can tell me whether or not you experience a difference. Another tip is to go for social play. So this is much more of a natural grown-up way of playing, so it always involves beer. Right? But I guarantee you that play, right, when you play, it will reach parts of your body and spirit that the beer will never reach. Okay, so social play. And of course, the next level up would be combining breaks with social play. So here we're playing at a conference, actually, after giving a play talk. We did the marshmallow challenge, but it's about finding ways, so little exercises you could actually have to do team forming or just encouraging a department to get to know each other better. You could do all of those things, right? Towards the end of the day, maybe just for 10, 15 minutes, put up some posters, have candy ready, and just get people to volunteer to play. Then another suggestion is to combine personal development with social play, right? So a lot of the games that I use as a coach includes things like the business value game, the XP game. I know Car Scotland has invented a lot of games. There's tasty cupcakes. So again, it's using these games, right? It's great because you're in that kind of agile arena. I've used the A word. In the agile arena, so that we can use these games, right? That will enable you to encourage collaboration. And then, of course, play is training. So I've got play built into my training courses. So next week, I'm going off to New York to play for a full 5 days. I get paid to do this. I'm like, fantastic. And you know what? When the managers see what happens in the rooms of the courses we run and the coaching sessions, they come to me and say, Portia, I want to see those delightful faces just light up every day at work like that. I've never seen that person smile for the 20 years I've worked with them. How did you make them smile? I was like, well, we were talking about planning and we were talking about estimating, right? It's about play. And as we can see, when you play, it actually models the play process as well, and the learning process of anticipation, surprise, the pleasure of actually learning something new. You start understanding, you start mastering what you're good at. And of course, you're done, you feel really professional about it, right? Poise. And of course, you can play for process improvement as well. So I've got a whole bunch of links at the end of this presentation, which is also available in SlideShare. I'll tweet at the end. So the bottleneck game. People tell me, I never thought the theory of constraints could be this exciting and fun, right? And I never did as well until I played that game, and then I shared with everyone else. Right? And once people start engaging hearts and minds and brain, then that's when you see organizational change. And of course, if you play your cards right, people will start actively finding you to play. So last year I gave this talk at Agile Cambridge as the keynote, and I met a friend here today called Sonny, and he took that presentation and he did a little bit of a mashup, and he's been using it to play with his team. So they have all sorts of different innovations of how they do stand-ups now, and everyone's much more engaged, right? And that's really about making play part of your life. And he was telling me how other teams are now inviting him to go over there to show them how he does it, right? So have a think about how you can combine work with play, and I'll stick around at the end of the conference as well, so we can certainly talk about it over wine or some other beverage. So I hope that this has given you some inspiration of how you can increase and fulfill your play potential. And remember, it only takes 5 to 10 minutes a day. 1 day of play lasts up to a week, and little and often. And if you get really good at this, you could be playing all the time. And one of the best ways to practice is with small children. Because when you're being boring or tedious, they let you know right away. They're the toughest audience. And one of the challenges, especially for you with nieces and nephews and stuff, is this, right? If you want to practice leadership skills, instead of command and controlling small children and say, thou shalt pick up that toy now, I will count to 1, 2, 3, and then thou shalt be punished. How about you got on the floor with them and go, oh, let's play a game, and then their ears perk up. Honestly, it does work. And they go, oh, it's a game. And you say, right, we're going to see how quickly we can put all these games together into that box. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. And they'll do it, right? And isn't that really what leadership and self-management and self-organization is about? It's about creating an environment where people are willingly going to do this, not because you're going to beat them with a stick, right? So lots of practice available. And imagine, this was the old version of life's creative circle. What if it became like this, right? And we could have a clearer purpose at work, and we could play every day. Because did you know that we spend around 70% of our waking hours in a lifetime doing work or work-related activities? That's more time than you will ever spend with your loved ones. Does that scare anyone? No. Now, I'm not saying you all have to rush out and give your colleagues a hug, but I would encourage you strongly to have a look at how we can rethink work as we know it. So here are lots of references that you'll be able to look at afterwards. So let's do some user acceptance testing. As a play seeker, play skeptic, I need ideas on how to play at work so that we can improve individual and team performance. If you agree with the following criteria, raise your hand. Number 1, I have a working knowledge of play. Number 2, I can explain the importance of play at work. Okay. The presentation is complete with speaker notes, so feel free to take it and set it free. And blame me, you know, just say this lady talked about play, I think it's really important we try it. Okay, number 3, I have 1 or more ideas to try back at work. Okay, maybe we can work on that in the breaks. And I've had fun. Okay, well, thank you so much for playing, guys. And let's play some more outside.